I'm in a field which is about 6 fields away from the chapel in the fields, and I wanted to reflect a little on what we mean when we talk about fields. In Old Testament times in the Bible, fields are very much associated with prosperity. If you look for references to fields in the Psalms, you will find that nearly every time the idea of having fields is associated with the idea of prosperity, of food which is there, of a settled life, a life very different from the life of a nomadic people. And in the story of Ruth, the fields are absolutely central to the story. Fields are the difference between life and death for somebody who lives off the grain which can be left after the harvest. But the fields are also the place where business is done, the place where romance blossoms, the place where people care for one another. When we come to the Gospel, Jesus uses fields to raise all sorts of questions. Fields in Jesus' time, as in the Old Testament, are still places of business and work and money. We perhaps have a reflection of that understanding about fields when we say to somebody, "What field are you in?" when we're asking them about the kind of work that they do. So fields are sometimes a sign of the things that keep us busy, the things that distract us from the kingdom of God. Perhaps you see that in its ultimate, where we see perhaps the fields of the First World War, or we remember the references to the killing fields in Cambodia. Fields that have become places where we do things which are the opposite of life and love. We talked about the mission field, and Jesus talked a lot about the harvest, and he talked about the need for workers for the harvest being huge and there never being enough workers. So fields are places where we do things and places where we make choices. Fields also, I think, though, talk to us about who we actually are. That great story of the treasure hidden in a field, the field hiding the thing which is of the greatest importance, the most precious thing. It's there in the field, but it's hidden and we seek it. There are good crops in fields, but sometimes the good crops get choked up by weeds. The story of the enemy who sowed weeds amongst the wheat. In that story, all turns out well, and it turns out well because everything is allowed to grow. Everything is allowed to reach its full potential. That, I think, is fundamentally not because of anything we do, but because of what God does. And fields are a place where we perhaps see that very, very clearly, because what we see in fields, and what we certainly see in this field behind me, is growth and life and hope. Just a short field parable from Mark's Gospel, chapter 4. This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself, the soil produces corn, first the stalk, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. As soon as the corn is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come.